Today is a funny morning for me. I printed a sermon or meditation, and I still remember when it printed out. For some reason, the first page and a half, if you have a keyboard, you know this, there's something called a slash. And I wish I had my sermon right now because I can't find it. But the entire first page and a half was, when it printed, it had Advent Joy, and then it had slash, 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 slash. And I thought, my God, you really are telling me this is a hard sermon for me this week to focus on joy. And Kendra knows this. We had a good 9 o'clock service with a few of us, and I had it in my hand there, and I said, I don't need it now, so I'm fine. But so I want to begin with this. She didn't use this downstairs at 9 o'clock, but the Broadview magazine, which will forever, I guess for me, is like Observer, but Broadview is the new Observer. It does capture how happy Canadians are, and I'm not thrilled about happiness maybe as much as joy, but so here's what it says in a little survey. 7.2 out of 10 Canadians feel that they're happy. 7.2. I laugh at that because every time my dad would always be, my dad was a math teacher at times, and he was a math teacher. I didn't like math that much. But Dad would always go, give me a number, 1 out of 10, on just how things were in life, right? That was the quick one, right? So I was actually with somebody having a really tough time the other day, a really tough time, and they said 4. And I knew in an instant that that's not a good place to be. It's better than 3, of course, but... So 7.2 is where most Canadians are at. Here's a good one. What are the main drivers of happiness for Canadians? Well, it seems like you're living the life of your dreams, and you have a sense of freedom. So we get fun with that one. Here's a good U.S. and Canada comparison. 51% of Canadians are happy, and only 46% of Americans are happy. I wonder what that's about. Here's the best one of all. There's provinces here. Guess who are the happiest provinces?
New Brunswick.
Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland. Labrador. Yes. Okay, here's some bad news. Who are the least happy provinces? Alberta, Ontario, and poor Manitoba. And then here's for us who feel a little wise today. 61%, though, who are 55 and up. You are extra happy, compared to only 44% of those who are under 55. So something about aging there. That's a little bit of fun. So I really have been intrigued by a pastor down in Arkansas, the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. And, this is where I do miss my sermon. I can't remember his exact full name, but I've been reading him on Pathos, which is a progressive Christian website. He's a blogger, and he's written, maybe his name will come to me, but he's, middle of his life, and he's quite an effective communicator. But his idea around this Sunday really grabbed me, and it's so different from me because it's just different. So I'll explain to you where he was coming from. And he's coming from an American perspective, and he said, quite honestly, I hear it from my family doctor friend, like, people are coming out of the doctor's office, and they're just a mess. Like, he goes, I know we're talking about America here. We got impeachment crisis going on, and we got opioid crisis going on, and suicide, and we got things are a real mess in America in terms of politics and inequality. And we know as Canadians that we may not be Americans, but we have our struggles too. And so I do totally relate to that. So this is where my colleague in ministry, I thought, had a little interesting tale to tell. I didn't know much about. He follows a mathematician out of Harvard University, has written a book about 2 people that I didn't know much about, and maybe you won't either, but a brother and sister. And I'll start with the sister, Simone Weil, so W-E-I-L. And she was a Christian mystic who fought the resistance in the Spanish War. She fought the resistance in France, and she historically is known as a great, really a saint of Christianity and compassion. And yet her brother, Andre, was the genius mathematician. And my pastor friend says, as this Harvard mathematician is reflecting on these brothers, these siblings, and certainly a great love for each other, but also this fierce competition in a sense they're both geniuses in their own right, this Harvard writer says, isn't it interesting that the mathematician is thrown into jail, I believe in Poland, expected to be, they thought he was a spy. In fact, he wasn't. And why he's writing letters to his sister who's trying to break out of France during the war and survive and resist. They're writing each other back and forth with sisterly love, but the professor says, you know what? They were actually sending math equations to each other. Algebra, mysteries of Greek, and all about math. And my colleague in Arkansas, the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, says, we sometimes really wonder what in the world Advent is all about. Like really, we come to church. Does it really do very much for the poor? We come to church and we pray. Does it really prevent our dear loved ones and friends from dying or suffering? We come to church, and what does it really do? And my colleague says, it's interesting. A genius who Andre goes on to live quite a fabulous life. Sadly, his sister, she dies of starvation. She dies a real saint. She dies really in her 30s, she dies. Still respected to this day, both of them. And he says, Advent is a bit like that in the sense that sometimes in the journey of life, we have to go sideways. So even if we are in prison in Poland, we've got to be working on our math. We've got to be working on something that we have passion about. Maybe for me this week it was going off to hear the Bear McNeils at the River Run. I'm not sure what it might be for you, but when life is really hard, sometimes we have to go. Some of us it's in the kitchen. I've been intrigued listening to how people, whether it's the new cooking shows or suddenly feeling this great passion of making food. Advent is a bit like that. It takes us into a new place. And that's the way it is for Mary. She, first of all, is afraid. She hears this amazing news, and she's terrified. And the angel says, no, calm down, Mary. All will be okay. And then after pondering, whether that's her time to pray, her time to be with herself and God, she comes to this amazing revelation that God is being magnified through her, and that this is a God that cares about the least of these. This is the God that cares about the forgotten. This is the God that cares about the marginalized. This is the God that cares about you and me. It's been a very difficult week. I was so sure that I'm still dumbfounded that Mandy has been fighting his cancer and doing so well, and so the suddenness of his death has hit me, and I can't even imagine what his parents and family are going through. And then when Nancy comes home from work and has spent an evening with a dear colleague and friend, only to learn that her child, through epilepsy, has died in her sleep. I've been pondering a lot lately. And I want to share this with you. It's almost 20 years ago now, but it was a late January Sunday. Galen and probably might have been working with you at that time. I knew that my niece Amanda was dying of cancer. At least we had the gift to say goodbye to her from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And I was called from Milton, and I went to my sister's home, and it's there that we bid our last farewell to Amanda. She was 11. And to see a family go through that kind of grief is my awareness to know what any family goes through that kind of loss is going to face. And the first thing I know is that life changes forever. My sister would definitely say, if she was here today, grief is not something you just, I don't know if you even get through it, but she, in some ways, thinks it might have been a 10-year journey for her. It's a long journey. And I know that joy is still so important in life. And the beautiful thing about my niece Amanda, I can say to you, is that I still have the greatest joy imaginable when I think about the times we spent together and her last magical, she actually had a magical horse pull up and take her on a ride at Christmas. So there are memories that abound forever. But in this season of Advent, I'm not sure if you're feeling trapped in a prison somewhere, or you're feeling a little bit lost with what is the real meaning of this season. But perhaps when sometimes you wonder, why in the world am I going to church? Or what in the world does it really make any difference to worship? Maybe I'll think about Simone and Andre, the brother and sister. Two very different paths, but two siblings that focused on math in their brilliant way, but still live their life as we try the best to do ourselves. So my friends, whatever journey you're on right now in this Advent season, I hope you find a way in your anxieties and your struggles to ponder things deeply, as Mary did. And she did it so beautifully. Thanks be to God.